The chamber of the Galactic Council was larger than any human hall. Bright lights glowed from crystal towers, and voices from dozens of species filled the air. Some spoke in whispers, some in deep tones, and some clicked or hummed in strange patterns. At the center stood the high platform where decisions were made. The rules of the council were law for all members, and no one was allowed to question them. Tom, the human envoy, sat at the edge of the chamber. He wore the simple blue of Earth's delegation. His eyes followed every word and every gesture. He was not the tallest, nor the strongest among the delegates, but there was a sharpness in his gaze that many had come to notice. For years, Tom had tried to work within the council. He had followed the procedures, spoken with respect, and sought compromise. But today, patience sat heavy on his shoulders. The council was voting on a new order. The rule said that no human ship could cross certain borders near rich trade routes. Those routes were now declared off-limits to Earth's colonies. Instead, they would be given to species that already had more wealth and more fleets. Tom raised his voice when it was his turn to speak. Human colonies need these routes, he said. Without them, our settlements will suffer shortages. We already trade under strict limits. If you close these paths, many families will face hunger. The chamber grew quiet for a moment. Some delegates tilted their heads, as if the human's plea was a minor distraction. Then one elder delegate, tall and covered in silver scales, responded. Humans must learn balance, the elder said. Too much freedom for a young species creates chaos. The council protects harmony. You will obey. The vote continued. Light crystals lit up around the chamber, one by one. Almost every hand, claw, or tendril raised against the humans. Only a few smaller species hesitated, but none spoke in defense. When the final light dimmed, the order was passed. The trade routes were gone. Humanity's rights had been cut once again. Tom's heart pounded. He looked around the chamber and saw no sympathy, only dismissal. To the others, humans were still newcomers, still weak. They thought Earth was small, fragile, and dependent. Tom knew many humans still believed in peace and cooperation. They had worked hard to join this great circle of stars. But how much longer could peace last if respect was never given? After the session, Tom walked out into the long corridor that wound around the council chamber. Windows stretched high, showing fleets of alien ships drifting outside in the orbiting docks. Every ship belonged to a species older than humanity. Their hulls shone with power, their weapons clear for all to see. Beside him, another envoy from Earth, Sarah, placed a hand on the railing. She was younger, with sharp dark eyes. She whispered, "They are treating us like children again. How long do they think we will bow our heads?" Tom did not answer right away. His mind was already on the colonies. He imagined Myra, a captain of a human fleet, returning to her people with empty hands. He imagined Ben, an engineer, struggling to send supplies to settlements cut off from trade. He imagined the children of Earth's outposts, watching their parents grow weary while the council spoke of balance. The frustration inside him deepened. Yet he also knew the danger. If humans rebelled too early, they could face fleets larger than anything Earth could build. The council was not only powerful, it was arrogant. That made it even more dangerous. As he stood there, watching alien ships pass by, Tom remembered Earth's history. Humanity had been underestimated before. Again and again, humans had faced stronger powers and had found ways to endure. They had fought for survival on their own world long before they looked to the stars. That same fire still lived in them. The council, for all its wisdom, did not understand that fire. Tom turned to Sarah at last. "We must send word home. They need to know what has happened. And they need to prepare." Sarah nodded. Her face was calm, but her voice trembled slightly. "Do you think Earth will accept this order?" Tom's eyes narrowed as he looked back into the chamber. The other envoys laughed and traded words as if nothing important had happened. He could feel the weight of their arrogance pressing on him. "No," he said slowly. "Not this time. Earth's patience is running out." The words hung in the air. Outside, a massive alien cruiser drifted past the window, its engines glowing bright. Tom studied it, then turned away. Somewhere inside him, a decision was forming. He could not speak it yet, not even to Sarah. But he knew the truth. The council had crossed a boundary today. And when humans were pushed beyond their limits, history showed that they did not break. They changed. They adapted. And sometimes, they fought. As Tom walked back to his quarters, the stars outside the station seemed sharper, brighter. They were witnesses to a coming storm. The chamber behind him still buzzed with alien voices, but he no longer cared for their dismissive tones. He was already thinking of Earth, of the colonies, of the fleets waiting to rise. Part 1 of the storm had begun. Humanity was not ready to strike yet, but the seed had been planted. And once planted, seeds always grew. Myra's ship cut through the dark of space as it approached her colony. The hull of her vessel was scarred from patrol duty, but her heart carried heavier marks. She had just returned from a council meeting in a nearby sector, where she was ordered to allow alien ships to take supplies from her colony. The council claimed the resources were needed for balance, but Myra knew the truth. Balance meant weakness for humans and advantage for others. As she descended through the sky of the colony world, she saw lines of transports already landing. Alien workers stepped out, their long arms and sharp tools glinting under the sun. They moved with confidence, taking crates of food, fuel, and minerals. Human families stood nearby, their faces tense and filled with quiet anger. Mothers held children close, fathers clenched their fists but did not act, and elders shook their heads as if betrayed once again. Myra stepped down from her ship. Her boots sank into the dust of the landing field. She had grown up on this colony, and every stone and tree was dear to her. Seeing strangers strip it bare was like watching someone tear pages from her childhood book. One child broke through the crowd and ran to her. His name was Adam, a boy she had seen before during her patrol visits. His small hands clutched at her uniform as he looked up with pleading eyes. "Captain, why are they taking our food?" he asked. Myra knelt down. Her heart ached, for she had no simple answer. "Because the council told them to," she said softly. "But who tells the council?" Adam asked again, his young voice clear. Myra's throat tightened. She could not tell him that no one told the council anything, that they acted as rulers above all. She only placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered, "One day, things will change. But not if we give up hope." Behind her, crates of supplies were lifted into alien transports. The workers spoke in their own language, ignoring the humans. Myra's crew recorded everything with quiet cameras, their faces grim. They knew the scene would spread to Earth, and once seen, it could not be forgotten. Later that night, the video traveled across the stars. It showed the silent cries of families, the empty shelves of the colony, the laughter of alien crews as they took what they pleased. Across human space, people watched in silence. Some wept, some shouted in anger, and some clenched their jaws so hard they could not speak. The spark of rage had begun to spread. On Earth, leaders gathered in the Great Hall. Tom's voice played alongside Myra's recording. The room was silent except for the images of loss and humiliation. Then the silence broke. Governors of colonies stood up, one by one, demanding answers. Admirals of fleets whispered to each other about hidden weapons and secret plans. Engineers like Ben, far away on small stations, received orders to begin preparing ships in secret. Myra herself sat in the colony's command room, staring at the empty shelves on the screens. Her crew waited for her words. She finally spoke. "We will not strike today. We are not ready. But we will not forget this day. When the time comes, we will answer." Her words carried through the small room, strong and steady. The crew, weary and angry, straightened their backs. They could wait. They could prepare. Meanwhile, the council congratulated itself. In the great chamber, alien delegates laughed about how easily humans obeyed. To them, Earth was still a young species with no teeth. They did not see the storm growing behind the silence. They did not hear the whispers spreading across human colonies, the whispers that spoke of unity, strength, and resistance. On one distant outpost, Ben adjusted the engines of an old warship. His hands were covered in grease, his face tired, but his heart steady. He spoke to himself as he tightened bolts and link circuits. "If they think we will scrap these ships, they are fools. We will need them soon." Across another colony, Sarah prepared speeches for human networks. She chose her words carefully, not calling for war, but calling for dignity. She knew that one strong voice could guide millions. And far above, in the orbit of the colony Myra protected, her ship drifted in silence. The stars reflected off its hull like sparks waiting to ignite. Myra stood on the bridge and watched them. She whispered to herself, "This is not the end. This is only the beginning." The council thought they had broken the humans once more. But instead, they had planted a seed of fury deeper than ever before. It would not bloom today. But it would bloom, and when it did, the galaxy would feel its fire. The last straw had been taken. And humanity, once patient and silent, began to stir. Ben worked alone inside the hollow of an asteroid. Around him floated pieces of old starship hulls, engines, and broken weapons. The council had ordered humans to dismantle all warships, claiming they were a danger to peace. Many had obeyed out of fear, but not Ben. He was an engineer, young yet stubborn, and he loved ships more than anything else. To him, a ship was not just metal. It was freedom, strength, and survival. His ship was hidden deep in the rocks, powered by secret generators that masked its signals. Day after day, Ben worked with little food and little sleep, fitting new engines and tuning weapons with whatever scraps he could find. He welded plates together, polished the cockpit, and tested thrusters in silence. His hands bled, but his spirit burned. "This ship will fly again," he whispered. "And when it does, it will not bow to the council." News of Myra's colony had reached him. He had watched the recording of families losing their food, of children crying while aliens carried crates away. The anger in him grew so strong that he nearly tore the tools from his belt. He knew he could not fight alone, but he also knew that if no one prepared, humans would be helpless when the storm arrived. His hidden ship would be ready, even if others stayed silent. Across human colonies, the same spirit began to rise. Farmers refused to send their harvests to council collectors. Miners slowed their work, hiding resources in caves. Pilots took their ships on training flights that were really secret tests of combat maneuvers. At first, these were small acts, barely noticed by the powerful. But like sparks falling on dry wood, they began to spread. Myra also felt the change. She had not told her people to rebel, but she noticed how they now stood taller when alien patrols came. Soldiers trained harder, engineers whispered about hidden projects, and even children played games where humans stood strong against council fleets. It was in their eyes, in their voices, in the way they carried themselves. Something was awakening. Tom, still at the council chamber, saw it too. He received messages from colonies filled with anger and resolve. He read them carefully, knowing that the council's spies watched everything. In public, he spoke calmly, still playing the role of a loyal envoy. But in secret, his words reached leaders across Earth. He warned them that silence would soon no longer hold the people together. In one of his messages, he wrote, "The people are changing. They will not wait forever. When the council pushes again, the answer will not be words." Back on Earth, leaders debated late into the night. Some feared war. Some believed peace could still be saved if they pleaded harder. But others began to agree with Tom. If respect was never given, perhaps it must be taken. Ben's secret work grew bolder. He built not only one ship but began preparing designs for more. A few friends who trusted him visited the asteroid, their eyes wide when they saw his creation. The ship gleamed with hidden strength. Its engines hummed with speed faster than most alien patrol ships. Its weapons, though simple, had been sharpened to deadly precision. One of his friends, a pilot named Omar, touched the hull and whispered, "This is not just a ship. This is a promise." Ben nodded. "And soon, we will need many promises like this." Rumors of hidden ships began to spread quietly. Pilots spoke of secret hangars. Engineers whispered of engines tested under cover of night. The council dismissed such talk, laughing at the idea that humans could build anything powerful in secret. They believed humans were too divided, too weak, too afraid. But history had shown that when humans were pushed to the edge, they did not break. They endured. They planned. They rose. One evening, Myra walked through her colony and saw families rebuilding a food store. Children carried small baskets, fathers repaired doors, mothers cooked meals to share. No one spoke of giving up. They worked with quiet determination, as if saying, "Take what you want, we will build again." Myra felt pride swell in her chest. She thought of Adam, the boy who had asked who told the council what to do. She realized the answer was coming. It would not be the council who decided the future. It would be humanity. High above, in the darkness of space, Ben's ship finally roared to life. The engines lit up, casting light across the asteroid walls. Omar climbed into the cockpit, and together they tested the thrusters. The ship darted forward, faster than they hoped. It turned sharply, then steadied, its hull strong and bright. When it returned to the hidden dock, Ben stood in silence, his chest rising with pride. He placed his hand on the ship and said, "The council thinks we are quiet. They do not hear us. But one day, they will. And when they hear us, they will never forget the sound." The sparks of defiance had been lit. They were small, scattered, and quiet for now. But sparks, when fed by anger and hope, always grew. And soon, the galaxy would learn that humanity's silence was not weakness. It was the waiting breath before fire. The chamber of the Galactic Council was filled again. Tom stood in the circle, his hands resting firmly on the railing. He knew what was coming, but hearing it with his own ears still struck like a blade. The council had declared that one of Earth's oldest colonies must be abandoned. The land, rich with rivers and forests, would be handed to another favored species. The reason was wrapped in elegant words: redistribution for harmony. But Tom heard only theft. Generations of humans had built lives on that colony, and now they were told to leave it all behind. Tom spoke with steady voice. This colony has been ours for over a century. People were born there. They worked the soil, raised families, and built cities. To strip it from them is not balance. It is injustice. The chamber was silent for a breath, then filled with voices. Some delegates dismissed his words, waving claws and tendrils as if brushing away dust. Others laughed quietly. A few looked uneasy but stayed silent. When the vote came, nearly every crystal lit against humanity. The order was passed. Tom felt his chest tighten. He thought of the people who would receive this news, the families who would see soldiers arrive to drive them from their homes. He wanted to shout, but he knew his words would be wasted here. The council had no ears for justice. That night, news of the order spread across human space. On 3 colonies, people poured into the streets in protest. At first, they held signs and shouted. But when council patrols marched to silence them, stones were thrown. Shouts turned into cries, and fires began to burn. Soldiers raised their weapons, but the crowds did not scatter. They stood their ground, anger stronger than fear. Myra was with her fleet near the border when she received the command to escort the evacuation of the targeted colony. She stared at the message for a long time. Her officers waited for her order, their faces pale. At last, she shook her head. "We will not carry out this command," she said. The room grew quiet. One officer whispered, "Captain, that is defiance." Myra's voice was calm but firm. "Yes. But it is also loyalty. Loyalty to our people." When council patrol ships approached the colony, Myra's fleet was waiting. The patrols demanded obedience, but Myra refused. The tension was sharp, silence heavy across the comms. Then, a spark. A council ship moved to force its way through, and one of Myra's gunners fired. A beam of light cut across the dark, striking the enemy hull. The first shot had been fired by humans, not in practice but in defiance. The skirmish was short but fierce. Myra's ships fought with desperation, driving the patrols back. For the first time, council ships retreated before human fire. Myra stood on her bridge, the red glow of battle still on her screens, and knew the line had been crossed. News of the clash spread faster than light. Across the colonies, cheers rose. For years, humans had been silent under council rule. Now, they had fought back. Even those who had doubted began to believe that resistance was possible. On Earth, the leaders gathered once more. Tom's voice echoed in the hall as he reported what had happened. His words carried not fear but resolve. "We are no longer dealing with unfair rules. We are dealing with open theft of our homes. We must decide if we are to kneel or if we are to stand." The room was divided. Some leaders trembled, warning that open war would bring destruction. But others, inspired by Myra's defiance, stood tall. The debate lasted through the night, but one truth became clear: humanity could not remain silent anymore. Meanwhile, Ben worked harder than ever. His hidden fleet of secret ships grew, one by one. Pilots tested them in silence, engineers built weapons in secret, and families whispered prayers over the workers' shoulders. The sound of hammers and engines became the heartbeat of a rising resistance. In the colonies, people began to prepare too. Farmers stored food, miners hid supplies, and even children learned how to signal with light and code. Everyone knew what was coming. The council would not forgive the skirmish. They would strike harder. But this time, humans would not bow. Back in the chamber of the council, alien delegates spoke with outrage. They called humanity reckless, dangerous, ungrateful. Plans for punishment were drawn in secret meetings. Fleets were ordered to prepare. Yet even as they raged, they did not realize the truth. It was not humanity that had broken the peace. It was the council. By stripping away homes, by taking food from children, by dismissing voices with arrogance, they had crossed the boundary. And when humans reached their breaking point, history showed that they did not simply endure. They pushed back with everything they had. Tom walked out of the chamber for the last time that night. He stood before the stars, his hands clenched at his sides. The council believed they still had control. But Tom could feel the change across the colonies, as if the stars themselves whispered it. The breaking point had arrived. Humanity had been pushed too far. Now, there would be no turning back. The night sky above Earth burned with the glow of satellites and stations. Messages from every colony poured in, carrying one clear voice: enough was enough. For the first time in generations, humans of every nation, every culture, every colony spoke not as separate groups but as one people. In the Great Hall of Earth, leaders from across human space gathered. Tom stood at the center, his face pale but his eyes strong. He had once begged the council for fair treatment. Now he no longer begged. They believe we are weak, Tom said, his voice steady. They think we will always bow our heads. But we are more than that. We are builders. We are survivors. And when pushed, we stand together. The council has taken our food, our trade, and now even our homes. If we accept this, then we are not a people at all. We are shadows. I say no more. The hall erupted with voices. Some shouted in agreement, others whispered in fear. The risk was clear: if humanity defied the council openly, war would come. Yet even those who feared war knew the truth: silence had already cost too much. In the colonies, the people listened to the broadcasts. Families gathered around screens, watching Tom's words. Farmers in the fields, miners in the tunnels, children in schools all felt a spark awaken inside them. It was not the spark of hate. It was the spark of pride. Myra's fleet became the shield of that pride. Once just a captain, she was now a symbol. Her defiance at the border inspired soldiers and civilians alike. Pilots sent her messages of loyalty, engineers offered her designs, and young recruits begged to join her. Myra stood on her bridge and listened to them, her heart heavy but firm. We do not fight for glory, she told her officers. We fight because our people deserve dignity. We fight because our children deserve a future. We will hold the line until Earth decides the path. Far away, inside the hidden asteroid dock, Ben's work grew into something greater. What had started as one ship became two, then three, then more. Engineers joined him, bringing stolen parts, hidden supplies, and secret blueprints. Each new ship carried the mark of human hands: simple but clever, tough but fast. They were not as large as council cruisers, but they were sharp, dangerous, and built with purpose. Omar, the pilot who had first tested Ben's ship, stood on a platform above the growing fleet. He smiled and said, when the day comes, these ships will roar. And the council will finally hear us. Ben only nodded. He was not a man of many words, but inside him burned the same fire that now spread across human space. The council, sitting in their chamber, still dismissed the danger. They called humanity disobedient, a minor problem to be solved with pressure. But their spies sent them reports: ships vanishing, colonies whispering, engineers refusing orders. The council grew uneasy, though they hid it behind arrogant speeches. On Earth, the human leaders met again. For the first time, they did not argue as separate voices. They formed their own council, one made only of humans, and they named it the Human Unity Assembly. It was not born from conquest but from necessity. Every leader, every admiral, every governor swore that no more council orders would be obeyed. When the assembly broadcast its message, the galaxy listened. Tom stood before the camera, his voice echoing across human space. To the people of Earth and every colony, we say this: we are one. We will no longer be divided by fear. We will no longer allow our homes to be taken. We are free, and we will remain free. The response was immediate. Across colonies, people cheered. Farmers raised tools like banners. Miners struck their hammers against stone in rhythm. Children painted stars on their walls, saying, "These are ours." Myra heard the broadcast on her ship. She closed her eyes, letting the words wash over her. Then she opened them and gave her order. "Signal all ships. The assembly has spoken. From this day, we stand not as a fleet of one captain but as the shield of humanity." Her officers saluted, their eyes bright with resolve. Ben also heard the message. He placed his hand on the hull of his newest ship, still warm from welding. "You see," he whispered to the empty dock, "they finally said it. We are one." For the first time, humanity was not a scattered voice in the chamber of aliens. It was a single voice that thundered across the stars. The council had underestimated the power of unity. They had thought humans too small, too weak, too divided. Now they faced something they had never seen before. Humanity was united. And when humans stood together, no force in history had ever silenced them for long. The galaxy did not yet know what storm was coming. But the council would soon learn that unity, once awakened, was the sharpest weapon of all. The council's fleets had arrived at the edge of human space. Massive cruisers, armed with weapons that could destroy entire colonies, formed a wall across the star lanes. They expected humans to retreat, to bow again to authority, to obey without question. Myra's fleet waited beyond the last jump point. Her ships were smaller, fewer, but each was swift, precise, and crewed by humans who had grown from fear into resolve. Pilots ran final checks, engineers tightened bolts, and soldiers loaded defensive systems. Every hand knew that the council expected them to surrender. Every hand also knew that surrender was no longer an option. Ben's hidden ships joined the formation quietly. They emerged from asteroid fields and hidden docks, surprising the council's scanners. Their engines flared with power and speed, revealing clever designs the council had not anticipated. Ben stood on his command deck, his hands resting on the railing, his eyes scanning the enemy lines. "They think we are small," he said. "They do not see what happens when humans fight for each other." Tom's voice echoed across the human network. Every colony, every ship, every station heard his words. The council crossed the boundary. "We have been patient. We have obeyed. Now, we act. Humanity stands together, and no force can break us." The first shots were cautious. Myra's fleet fired warning beams at approaching patrols. The Council tested human defenses, sending small ships forward. The beams struck shields, bounced harmlessly off reinforced hulls, and returned with precise human fire. Council pilots hesitated. They had never met an opponent who struck with both courage and cleverness. Across the human lines, Omar's squadron darted through gaps in the Council formation. Their engines hummed as they twisted and turned, striking weak points in enemy ships. Ben's designs allowed even smaller human vessels to punch far above their weight. Cracks appeared in the Council's lines. Their arrogance faltered under human precision. Myra directed every move with calm clarity. "Cover the civilians," she ordered. "Strike only where necessary. Show them our strength, not our anger." Her officers obeyed. They struck with purpose, protecting colonies while showing the Council that humans would not be broken. Reports of human victories spread quickly. On distant colonies, people cheered as the first news arrived. Engineers and farmers looked to the skies and felt hope. Children drew pictures of ships moving faster than the Council's cruisers. Humanity was not only fighting, it was inspiring itself. Inside the Council chamber, alien delegates were furious. They shouted at one another, demanding stronger measures. Yet every new plan met failure. Humans were fast, clever, and united. Even those who had doubted humanity began to fear what they had ignored for so long. Tom's broadcasts reached the ears of allies within the Council species. Some listened quietly, reconsidering their loyalty to a power-hungry leadership. They saw humans fighting not for conquest, not for wealth, but for survival and dignity. Murmurs of doubt began to spread, weakening the Council's authority even further. Myra's fleet maneuvered with precision. Ships twisted around asteroids, disappeared into nebula clouds, and struck from unexpected angles. The Council's cruisers fired back, but the humans' tactics were unpredictable, and each attack was calculated to minimize civilian risk while maximizing effectiveness. Ben watched the fleet respond in perfect harmony. Each ship, though built in different places, moved like a single organism. Their engines sang through space, lights flashing across metal hulls, lasers cutting paths through the darkness. He smiled. This was more than a fleet, it was proof of what humans could accomplish when united. The battle lasted hours, but the tide began to turn. Council ships retreated after losing several key vessels. Myra pressed the advantage, her ships chasing the enemy while shielding human colonies. Pilots cheered in the communications channels. Engineers shared data across stations, strengthening defenses for the next engagement. Humanity had struck its first real victory. When the smoke cleared, Myra's fleet regrouped. Not a single human ship had been destroyed. Civilian colonies remained safe, and the Council had tasted what it meant to face humans who refused to bow. Tom sent one final message to every human world. The Council thought they could control us forever. They were wrong. Today, we showed them our strength. Tomorrow, we will show them our resolve. Humanity stands together, and no one can break us. The stars above human space were quiet once more, but the silence was different now. It was not fear. It was anticipation. The Council had crossed the boundary. Humanity had responded. The galaxy had witnessed the awakening of a people who would not yield. And the storm had only just begun. The Council's chamber was tense. Delegates spoke in hurried whispers, their confidence shattered. For the first time in centuries, humans had shown they could resist, strike, and protect themselves. The arrogance that once filled the room was replaced with caution, fear, and uncertainty. Tom stood before the council again, but this time he was not begging. He was not pleading. He was speaking with the quiet power of truth. The council has tested humanity. You have pushed, stolen, and threatened. You believed we would remain silent, patient, obedient. You were wrong. Humanity is awake, and we are united. Myra's fleet hovered near the border of council space, engines glowing with readiness. Ships moved in precise formations, prepared for any sudden attack. Pilots trained together, engineers monitored systems, and soldiers readied defensive stations. They were calm, not because they feared nothing, but because they trusted one another completely. Ben's hidden fleet also joined the display. Ships emerged from secret asteroid docks, scanning the skies for threats. Each vessel was ready to fight or defend, but most importantly, each was a symbol of human determination. Ben ran his hands along the hull of his command ship, a small smile on his face. "They will see what it means to underestimate us," he said. The council sent a delegation of their own, smaller ships carrying envoys who wished to negotiate. They came cautiously, knowing that any misstep could trigger another battle. Tom met them aboard a neutral station. His eyes were steady, voice firm. "Humanity has fought not for conquest, not for revenge, but for dignity," he said. "We have proven that we are not weak. We will not be controlled. You may negotiate, or you may fight. The choice is yours. But know this: humans do not break under pressure. We stand together, and we will be heard." The envoys were silent. They reported back to the council. Leaders debated fiercely, some demanding retaliation, others warning against underestimating humans further. The council realized that the old ways of command no longer worked. They could not rule by fear. They could not ignore the humans' unity. Back on Earth, the Human Unity Assembly broadcast the negotiations to every colony and station. The people listened with pride. Children waved flags, farmers stopped work to watch, and soldiers in training paused to hear the words of their representatives. Humanity had become one voice, speaking across the galaxy with strength and dignity. Myra returned to her fleet after a long day. Pilots gathered around, sharing reports of patrols avoiding human space and alien fleets retreating. She smiled faintly. "We have shown them our power," she said. "But more than power, we have shown them our resolve. They must respect humanity now." Ben looked at the stars above his hidden fleet. He thought of every engineer who had worked in secret, every pilot who had trained tirelessly, every civilian who had endured hardship. "This is not the end," he said. "It is the beginning. Humanity has a voice in the galaxy now, and it will only grow louder." The council, for its part, had no choice but to accept the new reality. Negotiations began in earnest, and for the first time, humans were treated as equals. Trade routes were reopened, colonies regained control of their lands, and the council's decrees could no longer strip humanity of its dignity. Tom returned to the Earth delegation, looking at Myra and Ben. "We have fought well," he said. "But more than battles, we have shown the galaxy what humans are capable of. We are builders, thinkers, warriors, and survivors. We are not just part of the council. We are its voice in our own right." Myra placed her hand on the console of her ship, watching the stars. "We will protect our people," she said. "And we will never forget what it took to earn respect. The galaxy will know that humans are strong not because we fight, but because we stand together." Ben nodded, quietly satisfied. "And they will remember that strength cannot be ignored," he added. For the first time in history, humanity had reached a balance with the Galactic Council. They had been tested, pushed to the edge, and threatened with destruction. Yet they had survived. They had united. And they had claimed their place among the stars not as subjects, but as equals. The stars themselves seemed brighter as Myra's fleet moved through space. Humans on colonies and stations watched with hope. Messages of cooperation, progress, and preparation flowed between worlds. Earth's voice was no longer silent. It carried across the galaxy, clear, proud, and unyielding. And in the council chambers of the alien powers, a new understanding began to form. Humanity was not a species to underestimate, nor a species to control. They had crossed the boundary of obedience, and in doing so, they had shown the galaxy the true power of unity, courage, and spirit. Humanity had finally snapped, but not into chaos. They snapped into purpose, and the galaxy would never forget the day humans stood together and claimed their place among the stars.